Welcome to day 6 of our January video challenge. I read through all your comments on yesterday's video and I wanted to talk a little bit about one thing that you all said, which was leaving the windows open. I absolutely love natural light, especially in my own home. I want as much light as possible. I do not like dark spaces, and it feels like in my booth space that would be the same case. But I've run into a couple issues whenever I've tried to open the windows up, and I'll walk you through those now. For the most part, I need to capitalize on the space that I have in this booth as much as possible. I'm paying rent for a certain amount of square footage, and I have to be able to sell things out of the square footage that I have available. That leaves this wall for being able to drill in and put shelves on and artwork and things like that. And the same for this wall, being able to utilize it by drilling in and putting pieces on it. I can do a similar thing into the brick. It's a little bit harder to do that. However, putting things in the window becomes very difficult. It's not impossible. I did use these magnets that you see here to hang the wreaths up in the booth, and I have put artwork up in the windows before, which I really like doing. But to get the most out of this space, it makes it really hard to only put long furniture here and not utilize the vertical aspect of it as well. If we walk along the back side of Grit and Grace, all of these booths have windows in them. So you can see how other vendors also put furniture pieces in front of their windows to capitalize on this space. She's got a shelf along the back side here that sits on top of the brick wall, and she's able to then elevate smaller pieces and get a lot of use out of that space that way. You can see this booth space where she uses a lot of tall structures to maximize on the vertical space of her booth, and it still lets in a lot of light, and you have the windows up top as well. I feel like when it comes to making sure I do have enough inventory in this space, having the option of utilizing this and the vertical aspect of it seems really important. A lot of you also mentioned maybe taking the curtains out, and the reason that the curtains have been put in is because of the way the light comes into the booth space. So for most of the day, the light shines in and backlights the booth space, which can make it really hard to see items because you're staring directly into the light coming in, and that's why I ended up putting the curtains in. They are sheers, so you can still see through them, but it just diffuses the light a little bit so that you can focus on the product in the booth instead of the windows themselves. And as much fun as it is to look out a window, I would rather people be looking at what I have for sale than staring at the parking lot and cars out back. So I don't want y'all to think that I did not read all your comments and take into consideration opening up the windows, because I love that idea. It's great to get a different perspective and see things that other people don't see. And that brings us to another topic, which is this shelf here. Practically all the flow into my booth comes from this direction. The door is back that way, and most people walk down the aisle in this direction, which this is the view you get. You'd be able to see, if we put the mantle on the back wall here, you can see this shelf, and it still feels pretty inviting when you come into the space this way. I felt y'all were absolutely right with this tall piece. Some of you suggested that I use this shelf there and then move that back against this wall or something similar. But I think because this is going to be more of a permanent piece, having the clothing up in this direction, that one of the solutions might just be taking the top off of this shelf and keeping it down a little bit lower. That way the shelf would end right here. We could utilize this section for something else, and it wouldn't feel so dominating in the space whenever you're walking in towards it. Of course, nailing down on the things that we're going to do in here leaves me with a lot of work. I have to paint this piece, which I think I'm gonna keep cream. I've considered painting it blue, and then I am going to cut down this as well as paint it and do a little repair work on it. I have to take the legs off of this, refinish the other door and bring that in and put it onto the wall, and then I have to install the mantle, all of which I probably don't have time for today. I've only got about 15 minutes before they close the store, and even though I can stay, I think I'm gonna go home tonight and refocus myself. I do have to work tomorrow, so it won't be Wednesday until I can get back in here to do some of the projects. I did start painting this furniture piece, which I need to finish, but it's not gonna happen right now. I think in this time that I do have, I'm going to take the pieces that I know are staying in here and that I don't have to do work on and actually load smalls in. That way we don't have a full day of nothing being available in my booth. Surprisingly, I still sold stuff out of the little cart I had, so I did make sales today even though I had nothing in the booth space. I feel like this video is gonna end up being all over the place, but that's kind of just how my brain is functioning today. So let's try and take this 15 minutes and load some product into the booth. Well, nothing much has changed for the day. I am leaving it in a bit of a mess, but my brain has been a mess today, so that's just how it's going to end up looking until tomorrow morning. I am gonna try and come back in early before I do have to work, but for now, that's the end of day 6, so I can't wait to see you in the next one.